Nerderotic.com.
Welcome back to the Nerderotic channel. My name is Gary Beekler. I am in San Francisco, California, and I come to you from nerderotic.com. And this is a rare recorded video. Had some technical difficulties with the live stream, so we're going to have to carry on with just me talking to myself right now, which I don't really like. I really like talking to you guys, so won't make a habit of it. Don't worry about it. So we will start out the episode with it's a flashback to a prequel with Jimmy in the mailroom collecting money for the Academy Awards pool. And we know it's 1993 because one lady picks Howard's End to sweep because she loves Emma Thompson. And really, who doesn't? And the young Jimmy runs into a young Kim Wexler, who is an intern at this time. They have a brief conversation about him basically slacking and talking too much at each cubicle. He tells Kim it's just trying to boost morale, but it's basically Jimmy's a bullshitter, and a really good one. Really good one. We appreciate that. Then we also see a young Chuck. He had just won a big case where a corporation had dissolved itself and then reformed, basically to deny somebody deny a beneficiary some money. Chuck had won the case by finding an obscure law about it, and Kim was absolutely geeking out, and you could tell she's just a law nerd. Chuck walks over and they discuss the case briefly. Jimmy doesn't even get the sides right of the case. He doesn't even know who the client for Hamlin, and McGill is, and it's kind of funny. Yeah, Chuck just doesn't respect his brother at all. You can see it in the scene. It's oozing with disdain. But Kim is asking him all the right questions, even though he doesn't remember her name at first, and grills him a little bit. And you can see that he's impressed, but not really impressed with Jimmy. So after that scene, we see Jimmy walk away. He's got his mail cart. He walks past the library, the law library, and then walks back in. So we see that Jimmy actually is being serious. He's just being coy about it, which is strange, but Jimmy. So we run to current time in the show, and Kim is in their apartment looking over the Mesa Verde stuff with also looking at some criminal files. So she hasn't given that up yet. And she walks over to the bedroom. Jimmy's asleep. He's got a pad of paper on his stomach. And she looks at it, and it's Jimmy planning out Wexler and McGill's office. He's getting some titles up, and she pulls getting some, they're working out the title. He's got some notes on it. She pulls the next page over, and he's like designing a sign and everything. And it's kind of cool. You see his eyes on the prize, and she sees right there how much it means to him. And this is going to play into things later, because I've been, I'm a big fan of Kim. She's been a very supportive girlfriend, partner, friend, but she does have her flaws like everybody else. And yes, it is a flaw. She works a little bit too much, and her career comes before everybody. But she might also have a good reason for that. That's very arguable. And I do understand that. So after that, we see them waking up in the morning. Jimmy's making juice, and Kim asks about the therapist. And are you going to see the therapist? And Jimmy, is at least honest to her at this point and says, no, I'm not, it's not for me. I need to move forward. I've just thought about it. I was going to go. She asked, you said you were going to go. He said, yeah, I was, but I calmed down. And, I just don't think navel gazing is going to do me any good. And we see that Jimmy's the type of person to where if he sees he stops and has to actually deal with his problems, he'll have to actually deal with his problems, and it'll stop his forward momentum. It's kind of like a shark. You got to keep swimming. Not very healthy. So the next scene, we see Kim at Schweikert and Coakley, who has previously offered her a job. And she sees Rich Schweikert, and they have a brief conversation about Jimmy. And then she asks about their bank division, which he says, we really don't have one. We got a couple of cases, but she's all, well, would you like one? And that's where the scene ends. And we see Kim doing the same things Jimmy is. They're not being honest with each other, and they're moving ahead with their plans, and they're not telling each other what those plans are. And it's very interesting. Now, Jimmy's is way more sly than, well, he's not more sly, but it's way more questionable, his plans, than Kim's are, but they're both going about it the same way. And we know that they don't end up together. So we're just watching a very slow car wreck at this point. And it's, so good. It really is. And after the weekend I had of really bad television watching, I am very happy to be back at Better Call Saul to cleanse the palate. So we end up, the next scene is with Mike, and we're in the big warehouse that ends up, eventually being Gus's meth lab. And we see two big mobile homes, 2 bedrooms each. They're fully plumbed and wired. And Mike is pretty impressed, and he's talking to Gus, and he says, well, that's a good start, but we're going to have these guys in here for 6 to 10 months. They're going to be climbing the walls, so we need to keep them busy. Let's get a basketball court in here, a foosball table, get a full bar. They're German, so of course, beer, German, yeah. And Gus just says, make a list. And then Tyrus comes in and says something to the effect of the infection has gotten bad. And Gus leaves abruptly, tells Mike that he could tell Tyrus anything he needs. Which Mike does. And he starts out by saying, yeah, we're going to have to get the treadmills. We can't use consumer grade treadmills. These guys will burn through it. And, he's talking about getting weights and stuff. And it also shows like how freaking detailed Mike is. But it's also a part of, Mike escaping his grief. And man, it's funny how, all the, Walter White from Breaking Bad and Mike and Jimmy are all people dealing with grief in very insane ways. Their stories mirror each other, and I'm seeing that more and more as time goes on. And Mike's story is equally as interesting as Jimmy's, if not a little more this season. I feel like Jimmy's is moving a little slow for me, but not too bad. Not too bad. It's still really entertaining. And, it's really not about the minutia in this show. It's about the character development and the acting, which is absolutely top notch. We're back at the cell phone shop with Jimmy. He's on the phone trying to get pricing on signs, and he wants a huge sign, and the company he's talking to can't even go that big. And he's all, well, where do the casinos go to get those big light up signs? And the lady's like, I don't know. In the meantime, he gets another phone call, and it's from an executor of a will for Geraldine Strauss, who was that nice old lady that he helped a couple seasons ago, who had the little figures, the little Hummel figures. She had passed away, and her nephew was calling Jimmy to help with the will that he wrote up. And it's really hard for Jimmy to turn this down, and he has to admit that he's not practicing. And he actually refers them to Hamlin and McGill, which must have been really tough for him because he's walking away from easy money. The guy had asked him, are you on an hourly rate or a flat rate? And you could just see Jimmy's wheels turning, but he's like, damn it, no. Yeah. And you can also tell that he's really affected by Mrs. Strauss's death, more affected than he was by Chuck. He even asks about the memorial, and he had missed it. And then after this scene, we see him going to his house, and we see something very familiar from the first season when we were in the Cinnabon universe. Jimmy sitting down and watching videotapes of his old commercials. Well, he sits down and watches a commercial with Mrs. Strauss in it, and it ends with her just staring at him. And again, you see that Jimmy is feeling way more about her than Chuck. And of course, he asks the executor about the Hummel figure and what happened to it, and it went to one of her grandchildren because he finished college. And the guy's like, "How'd you know that?" "Oh yeah, you wrote the will." "Oh yeah." Right. So after that, Kim gives Jimmy a call, and they meet for lunch. They have a little small talk, and then she drops kind of a bomb on him. She says, "This, I got some really good news, but this is going to affect Wexler and McGill." And she tells Jimmy that she was offered a job, even though she had turned this job down many, many times. And the truth of the matter is, she wasn't offered a job. She offered herself to them for a job, and she's going to be made partner. She's going to be able to do the Mesa Verde stuff and practice her PD overflow, being a public defender. And this surprises Jimmy. He's like, "What? You've been doing that?" And she's all, "Yep, I've been doing it on the side, and I like it, and I'm good at it, and that's what I want to do." And Jimmy's also, "You want to have your cake and eat it too?" And she's all, "Yeah." So he takes a little breath, and he's like, "I got to go to the head." And she's like, "Jimmy, no." He's all, "Fine, I just got to pee. I'm fine." And then we see Jimmy actually feel some feelings again. And I think he's being a little piled on at this point. I think Kim was pretty insensitive at this point. very insensitive at this point. Jimmy's still grieving, and you want to pretty much take away his dream. Now, I understand why she would do this, and there might have been a better time in the future, but to do it right now, very questionable. Of course, I think this was a direct result of Jimmy not going to therapy. I think she just feels like she can't trust Jimmy, so she's got to move on. It was rather kind of rash, but she does know Jimmy. Still, the timing of it, very insensitive. So Jimmy walks to the kitchen while he goes to the head, and he holds his stomach, and you hear the chopping in the kitchen and all the commotion, and the volume gets ramped up, and you can tell it really affects him. But then he just turns it off, walks back, and tells Kim, yeah, go ahead. I think that's a good idea. And we find out what Jimmy has in mind later. He's not going to give up that easy. Hell no. But Kim is surprised, and she is happy because she got her cake, and she's going to eat it too. But with all things, that will come with strings as well. And who's to say Mesa Verde is even going to be happy with this decision? They hired her, not her at another firm. So we'll see how they deal with that later. In the next scene, we see Mike apologizing to Stacy. And what we got out of this scene basically is, he apologized for what he said in the group last week, but he's not going to go back. So we see another person denying therapy when they really need to. Another grieving person that really needs help, just burying themselves in their work, and very dangerous work. And we know where his story ends. So, if Mike stayed with the group and didn't sabotage himself, but that's what he did. He did that to get out of it so he could do more of his work because it makes him feel better. Next scene, we go to Hamlin and Hamlin McGill, and Jimmy's going there to pick up his $5,000 inheritance check from Howard. And he sees Howard's completely stressed out. He grabs the check, and before he leaves, he's like, "Are you okay? I noticed a lot of empty cubicles out there." And Howard's all, "No, I'm not okay. We're restructuring right now. We're right-sizing." And Jimmy's all, "Okay. Great." And he sees Howard feeling sorry for himself, so he kind of lights a fire under his ass, yells at him a little bit, and he goes, "You know what? You're a shitty lawyer, but you're a great salesman. Go out and do it." And Howard's like, "Fuck off, Jimmy." He's all, "There you go." Then, of course, Jimmy uses Chuck's inheritance money to buy the burner phones. He receives a shipment at the nail salon, fills up his office with them. The lady who owns the nail salon is not happy. She, lectures him on get-rich schemes. And, of course, he has to bribe her with a phone at that point. But nothing's going to stop Jimmy from selling these cell phones. And you see that at the end of the episode. The next scene is great. So we have Victor and Gus. Victor, of course, is in a coma. On a ventilator, and Gus is sitting there just checking on him. This was, of course, the person who had the infection, and he's talking to Victor. He's all, "My doctors, everybody's telling me you're not going to wake up. But, I don't know." And then he sits down and he tells a story about when I was a boy, I was poor, and I lived in the hills, and I lived in a house that was built by whatever my brothers could find, sheet metal or plywood. Or animal skins or whatever. And he said, "I was always hungry, but in the backyard we had a lucuma tree. But the tree never bared fruit, and my parents had given up on it a long time ago. But when I was 7, I fixated on the tree. I watered it every day, cared for it. It took a long time, but it eventually bore some green fruit. I went back. I stole one of the fruit. I went behind the shed, ate it by myself, and it tasted like caramel." It was such a great scene. And he's all, "It was the best thing I've ever tasted in my life." Then he goes on to say it started bearing more fruit, and he eventually went down to town and started selling the fruit. And then one day he got back and he noticed like half the fruit was gone and it was half eaten. And he expected it was a coati, which is, I guess, is a giant, it's kind of like a bobcat maybe, larger than a normal house cat, but not too big. And he set up a snare, and it eventually caught the coati, but it broke its leg when it was trying to get out, so it ran under his house. And he's all, "But I sat out there, and I knew it was injured. It had to come out, so I waited. And I waited. I waited into the night. My brothers called for me, but I did not answer. I was so silent. But then the animal came out. It was hungry. It knew I was there, but it had to come out, and I was ready for it this time. And I captured it, and the merciful thing would have been to kill it. But I kept it." And then he stands up over Victor. He's all, "I know you will wake." Oh, it was such a great scene. And it was basically, just saying that this man is insanely patient and he doesn't and then the cruelty to animals thing proves that he's a complete psychotic. So we get back to Mike at the warehouse and the Germans have arrived and it looks like there's about 7 of them. And they're very impressed with all the amenities they have. They start drinking the beer and Mike gathers them around for a meeting. And one guy kind of lags, a guy named Kai. And Mike is trying to give him the parameters like, hey, there's a shopping list. If you ever need anything, there's a direct phone to me. Kai doesn't come over right away. He keeps pouring his beer. And then when he walks over, he's all, where are the girls? And then Mike's like, well, I'll get you anything within reason. And you see him just staring him down. And Mike is just nothing but pent up rage from Maddie dying and all the shit going on and Stacy and the group. I thought he was going to kill that guy right there and then. But that will probably come later. And yeah, it's just a matter of time and how at this point. So poor Kai really should have come over when Mike asked you to. And there's cameras everywhere. There's also a station outside. There's a Sally port in front. So it's essentially a prison for these German workers. And they're going to have to work their 10 hours a day, hard labor. So that's probably why they're going to have to do a lot of playing. They might want to think about finding a way to get some girls over there. I don't know. Or guys, whatever they're into. So in the final scene, we find out why it's called Pinata. Jimmy talks to the kids who had rolled him in the previous episode to offer him a deal. Offer him $100 to leave him alone and let him sell his cell phones, his burner phones. Of course, and Jimmy knows this, the kids don't take the deal. And they chase him down an alley, and it ends up being a trap. There's 2 very large gentlemen behind the kids. They abduct them, tie them up, hang them upside down, put duct tape over their head in a pinata factory, I guess. And we see a bat dragging across the ground, and then we see these 2 gentlemen start bashing in the pinatas. And we see Jimmy, and the kids are hanging upside down, but where the camera angle is, they're right side up. So we see an upside down Jimmy talking to the kids going, now, you're going to leave me alone, aren't you? And the kids are all, right. So he removes the duct tape, and the kid, again, offers his apologies, said it'll never happen again. He swears to God, he crosses his heart, and Jimmy's all, do you really mean it? And the guys are getting closer, bashing in the pinatas, and the kids are shitting their pants at this point. So Jimmy's all, okay, I've heard enough. That's good. But the guys keep coming and bashing the pinatas. He's all, hey, guys, it's okay. I appreciate your energy, enthusiasm in this, but we can back off. And it's scaring the kids even more. And Jimmy's like, no, guys, really, you can't do this. And they get right about to looks like they're going to bash their freaking heads in, and they back off. And Jimmy leans down and just says, that was your one warning, and leaves them hanging there and walks out the door. So a great episode, a quiet episode. We're seeing a slow burn here, but it's really enjoyable. And what this show's really about is the great acting and the great character development about this. So, and also the stories that kind of reflect Walter White's from Breaking Bad. We're dealing with grief with Jimmy losing his brother, Mike losing his son, and what our 2 characters are doing in this situation. That's absolutely insane. And we're seeing the birth of a couple of bad guys who, might have been good-ish, but we do still see them both trying to keep a tether to a normal life, but it's not in the cards for them. And we know this. And that's the tragedy of the show, where it's just seeing a slow motion car wreck at this point. And also, Kim and Jimmy's relationship, and Nacho, who we haven't seen in a couple episodes. Maybe Nacho is the one guy who just walks away from this. I suspect one person will, but not many. And, we're also going to see eventually at some point what happened to Jimmy or Saul after Breaking Bad. Now we see in the scenes for next week, somebody does address him as Saul Goodman. So we will see. Man, I'm bummed out. I don't have a chat to talk about. So please leave your comments in the comment section and I will return them as quick as possible. We do love to hear from you. Please like, share, and subscribe. We've gotten quite a few new subscribers and we really appreciate that. We hope you like our stuff here. We hope you stick with us. Please hit me up with any requests. If you go to the About section of our channel, my email address is there. Hit me up, or my DMs are open on Twitter. Nerderotic.com is our main website. We have our live stream schedule there. We stick to that pretty religiously. We're always give or take a few minutes on the time, but we're there. And again, most of our videos are live, so they're interactive reviews because we really like to discuss with you the show we saw. So thank you very much, Better Call Saul fans. We will see you next Monday, and may the small folks sing songs of your greatness.
Nerderotic.com. Please subscribe.